Hello everybody and welcome to a What's Next podcast. Today I'm joined with Sue Smith, who is the President of Cancer Support France, and we're going to have a chat with her. We're going to find out all about the work they do. Sue, 1 in 2 people suffer from cancer, so it's a really important subject.
It is.
You're not, unfortunately, but the association is 20 years old this year.
It is, yes.
So a little bit how this 20 years have passed, a bit of history.
Okay. Well, we were started, as you say, 20 years old, 2002, by a remarkable lady called Linda Shepherd, who had just moved to France and was diagnosed quickly after with breast cancer. Linda had pretty good French skills. She was impressed with the French medical system and she was supported by some very good friends. But she wanted to try and find a source of English-speaking support where she could speak freely about her fears, her concerns, without involving somebody she loved. So she wanted a completely separate service that she could find. And she looked everywhere in France and couldn't find anything. So with a group of friends, she decided to start one herself.
Well done, Linda.
Well done, Linda. So this group started as all the best associations do, around a kitchen table. And then the ladies decided, I think it was mostly ladies, there may have been one or two men, that they probably needed some training. And they needed to do this properly and make sure that they could support people in a constructive way. And they made a contact with somebody from an association called Cancer Link in London.
Okay.
And a lady from there came over and trained them and introduced them to a concept called active listening, which is a way of supporting people and helping them find their own way through troubled times. One association became too big, split into 2, then 4, and then we're 16. With 16 associations, it was all a little bit too much to manage, and Linda formed the National Association in 2010.
Okay.
And that's where we are today.
So the last 12 years, because we're 2022, you've been as you are now. I've spoken with you before on the subject, and I know your story is very similar to lots of others who came to France on holiday with the children, loved it, decided to move over here, etc. How did you get involved with the association? Because you are now the president and you're only the second one.
No, I'm the, oh goodness.
Oh, sorry.
Fifth
president.
Fifth president.
Oh, still, okay.
Yes.
So how did you make that rise in the ranks? Sorry, just before you do, I'm sorry folks, we're sitting in a lovely public park in the city of Saintes, in the lovely Charente, and there are a little bit of background noises, bear with us. So, Sue, how did you get involved?
When my husband was diagnosed with cancer in 2010, I looked for support. And I found Cancer Support France then, so I knew of it. I didn't actually use their services. It's a long story, I won't bore you with it. But over the following 4 or 5 years, we were a group of 8 people who regularly used to get together and discuss books, strangely enough.
Okay,
we're
so
a book club.
Like a lot of great ideas, starts with a book club.
Starts with a book club. Of the 8 friends, sadly 4 of them, in a very short time, were diagnosed with cancer. And we supported each other. We did very well. One lady was extremely ill and was bedridden. Unfortunately, at the same time, her husband was diagnosed with an illness and had to go into hospital. And we, as a team, we stayed with that lady 24 hours a day, taking it in turns. So, having successfully done this, and I have to just add that that lady is remarkable and very, very well now. 8 years on. I thought I want to carry on doing this, and I want to do it in a proper, controlled
More
way,
structured.
a structured way, and I would like to have support for myself and be trained. And so I then joined Cancer Support France. I trained as an active listener myself.
The training is actually quite extensive, isn't it? I mean, you have sort of, it's not just half an hour or an hour.
No, it's not at all. It's quite an extensive course, and perhaps I can go into that in a little while.
Yep.
And yes, just through being active within the association in Charente-Maritime, I was asked if I would stand as president 2.5 years ago, which I did. And from that, I was part of the National Council, and this year I was asked to stand as president for the National Association as well. So that's where I am, and that's my involvement. Yep. It does take a lot of time, but I thoroughly enjoy what I do. Mm-hmm. And I hope that by supporting my association and other associations, we are helping others.
But as I said, it's not just you, you'll have a team of people.
We have a team, yes. Yeah. Every association has its own committee, and the National Association has its own committee as well. So we have an administrator, a secretary, a treasurer. Treasurers are so precious to us. We have fundraisers. We have a lot of people in all the associations.
You've had a big fundraising event with a lot of cycling.
We did have a lot of cycling, strangely enough, in the lot a couple of months ago. The National Association has a fundraiser once a year. That's the only fundraising that the National Association do. And this year it was a series of cycle rides in the Lot Valley, in fact, along the river. And it's quite hilly there, and a marvellous team of cyclists went out every day and came home exhausted. But then we had a nice meal or a drink together, and it was a very convivial way of getting together.
For anyone wishing to do a small fundraising event in France to assist with the organisation, what would you be telling them? Where would they have to come to get advice on that?
They'd have to go to their local association. That's the first point of call. As I mentioned, there are 16 associations. In most of France, we're not represented in the east or in the centre by associations, although we can give support to people anywhere in France. It would be quite nice to have some associations in those areas. But we cover Paris, from Normandy right the way down the west coast towards the centre, Vienne, Deux-Sèvres, Auvergne, and down to the Lot, and then right the way across from Gascony all the way through from Spain to Italy.
Well
so
represented.
We have plenty of associations. They're not just departmental. Many of the associations cover several departments. And they all have their committees and their teams and their fundraisers. And so if you would like to do some fundraising, become a member. That would be the first step of your local association. Membership is something like €10, sometimes €15 a year, depending on the association. And that helps support our work a lot. Fundraisers after that, we're having plenty. Because of the 20th anniversary, we've seen an awful lot of tea parties this year, and barbecues and music events, and there's been a lot going on. But if anybody wants to organise on the lines of a Macmillan coffee morning, right? Okay. Contact your local association and offer your help.
We'll put details about the group and the associations via their website at the end of the podcast. Training. You mentioned that earlier.
I did mention training, yes. Training. Anyone who volunteers is probably going to have an introductory course, which is just a couple of hours, just to understand the confidentiality clause that we have. We are extremely hot on confidentiality. And boundaries as well, because not every volunteer wants to wants to be an active listener and work face-to-face with somebody.
Not
so that would
everybody,
be,
sorry to interrupt, not everybody also wants to divulge too much.
Yeah.
So I would imagine there are different ways that you can get support. Some people don't like to talk, but they can pour it all out on an email.
yes.
Other people just wouldn't
Yeah.
want to write it down, but are quite
Yeah,
happy
that's
to,
right.
to chat. So
Yeah.
I would imagine
Yes.
the training would be in different.
The training, yes. So that if somebody wants to become an active listener, they then go on a training course. We call it the initial training course because we have lots of follow-up. The initial training course is 3 days. 2 days together, and then another 6 to 8 weeks later, a third day. In these courses, they are taught how to ask the right questions and how to support people in different ways. As you say, some people don't want to meet face to face; they want to make a phone call and not actually visually see somebody. They find it easier to talk to a blank wall. Some people really struggle to speak at all, but they find that their fingers work very well, and they will they'll get up at 3 in the morning with all their worries and write a long email pouring everything out. And some of those can be very tricky to handle, but at least the active listener does have time then to think about and control their response. Active listeners do work one-on-one with a client. In occasional cases, they can call on another active listener to assist, but generally it's one-on-one. It's a fully confidential and totally free service that we offer. But sometimes it does become too much for the active listeners, so they are encouraged to have a mentor who will be an experienced active listener.
It's quite an emotional time, I would imagine. And if sorry, I'm interrupting you again. When you're involved with someone you don't know very well, you can be more objective, but it is a difficult thing, and I would imagine the training must involve preparing people for that.
Yes, it does. It does, and it prepares you to actually set your own boundaries, which is another really important thing. Some listeners don't want to do face-to-face at all. They will only want to speak to somebody by phone or email. Some listeners can't bear the thought of doing it by email or phone, so they do want that personal touch. There are some types of cancer that some active listeners don't want to be involved with. There are geographical limits. Some listeners won't want to travel too far. They may be quite happy to meet a client in a cafe for coffee, but they won't want to meet them face to face. Face to face in their own home. And there are all sorts of other boundaries you might have. You might not want to deal with a client who's possibly facing the end of their life. Some male clients may not actually want to deal with a male client, male active listener. So again, you can set your boundaries. And every association has a coordinator who keeps that information for the active listeners, and so they will find the right active listener for the client and for their situation.
Have you found recently with COVID, I know you also provide support going to hospitals with people and assisting in translation and so on. With COVID, that's the last time I went to the cardiologist with my husband, he wouldn't even let me go in with him. Have you found that's changed somewhat?
It's beginning to get a little bit easier. Depends on the hospital, various variations. One of our associations has very, very strong links with the Oncopool in Toulouse, and they do send in somebody every week to visit the wards, and they will engage with all the English speakers who are in the wards if they want to. If they obviously, if the patient doesn't want to speak to anybody, we don't interfere, but generally we can go in there, and that's something that is, they have an agreement, they have an accreditation with the alcohol to use, and it's something they've worked very hard to get. Other hospitals won't allow people in, but we have been able to support clients by phone during consultations. So the consultant is quite happy for there to be a phone for language support if the client is unsure. It's a difficult thing going into a cancer consultation on your own. It's such an emotive, such a frightening word, cancer, that people, their brains just don't work. I was the same when my husband was diagnosed. You go in those days we could go in together into a consultation, you come out and you both remember something different.
Yes.
It's something that stress does. So it is always helpful to have somebody else there if you can, or to have somebody listening in on a telephone if the consultant allows.
I've had quite a lot of experience with friends and family, and sometimes you find one part of the couple, the brain will freeze, and the other part of the couple will say, what happens now?
Yeah. So
sometimes having that support, whether it's close family or somebody objective, helps you through it. And imagine the vocabulary is something else for perhaps someone who doesn't have a lot of French.
Yes, vocabulary is a difficult. I find especially people who've only recently moved to France, they're not confident in their French. Even if they have quite a bit of French, they're just not confident enough to face this challenge. I mean, it's a challenge.
It is, yeah.
It
puts everything on hold.
It does. It does. It still has that, although many outcomes are better. Thank goodness in France the screening processes are so good. The cancers are picked up early, in particular in France. Despite that, it still has that ability to just strike fear in your core, doesn't it? That word.
It does. I remember. This is a little light story in a way. I went to the hospital for a consultation with a couple, and the husband had been diagnosed with a certain type of cancer, particular to men, and his wife was quite frightened, so I said, would you come with us? And I said, yes, that's no problem. This is going back a few years ago, so COVID wasn't an issue then. And we were sitting in front of the consultant, so he said, so who are you? So Mrs. X said, well, I'm his wife. And he said, who are you? And I said, well, I'm a friend. And we got this funny look. So we said, no, I'm not that kind of friend. I'm just here to help with a bit of interpretation. So sometimes there are light moments in it. Fortunately, he went through everything and it's all good now, so we're good. Same with my husband. The nurse he had for each chemo treatment he had was the same nurse. So they follow through very well, and they have a team sort of dedicated to that patient, and you get the same day of the week, same time of the week, so you know who you're going to get. And I remember saying to the nurse, I think you've seen more of my husband in the last 6 weeks than I have.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. And you can build up a good relationship if you've got that continuity. And consultants. In France, we're so lucky you see the consultant.
And it can be very quick.
And it's going to be the same person you see every time. It's not some random doctor just turns
on
up.
a team. Yeah,
exactly.
Right, okay, Sue. So, speaking about all of that, I have a family member with cancer. I feel quite alone, a bit distressed about it all. So I telephone 0800 240 200. What happens next?
You leave a message. That's the first thing. You leave a message. The helplines will be back to you within 24 hours maximum. It's usually an awful lot less than that. But helplines will give you a call back. So if you're afraid at 3 o'clock in the morning, phone that number, leave a message.
24 hours.
It's 24 hours, but there's not somebody at the end of the phone. So one of the team will bring you back straight away, within hours. They will talk to you about where you live, what sort of support you need, emotional, language, and then they will pass you to a local association. So you'll have spoken to a helpline team member. Sometimes this goes back and forwards a little while. You might not get the answer you want. You might want to think about whether you want that support before you ask to be passed to a local association. But then they will pass you to a local association. And you will be contacted by an active listener. And it's up to you how the active listener contacts you, whether it's by phone or by email. Some people still have that feeling that they want this to be their problem and not shared with a family member. So you're living with your family member who's become ill, but you don't want them to know that you're actually struggling with helping them. So a phone call may not be.
Do you think there's still an element of, I should be doing this, I should be strong, I'm ashamed?
Very much so.
Sometimes.
Yes, I think shame does come into it, but mostly it's the person who's got the cancer, you want to be strong for them.
Yeah.
And then suddenly something inside you just flicks a switch and you're not as strong as you thought you were, and you just feel that you would like to unburden a little to somebody who doesn't know anything about you, doesn't know anything about your loved one, somebody completely a stranger.
Sometimes it is easier to confide.
It is. So you've made contact, you and your active listener are now in contact, and then it's up to you how often you speak to that person. It could be every couple of days, once a week, once a fortnight. It's entirely up to you, and you come to an agreement with the active listener. I'd like to go back to the confidentiality here, because at no time will your details be shared with anybody else. The helplines have it. It goes to a coordinator locally and then on to the active listener. But it's up to you how much detail you give. Obviously they need your contact details, but and the details will be destroyed after a certain amount of time. So we don't keep any records after a certain amount of time, and that varies from association to association. You may have decided that actually a one-to-one active listener isn't right for you. Most associations do have drop-in coffee mornings, where people can just pop in and sit and have coffee and chat with other people who are going through the same as them, with an active listener or without. We try to facilitate, I think is probably a good way of putting it. We try to facilitate, so whatever help you need, if we can find a way of getting you that help, we will.
All right, so, and of course to do all this, you need to have money.
You do need money.
The floor is yours. Tell everyone how they can donate and give to your great organisation.
We have a website, of course. It's www.cancersupportfrance.org. On the home page, on the left-hand side towards the top, is a little area that says how to donate. And if you click on there, it gives you all the details. We have PayPal, we have Alvera. You can send us a check. You can drop some money into your local association. If you want to donate to your local association, that's very simple too. The instructions are there. If you want to donate to the National Association, thank you very much. Just get in touch with the treasurer or following the instructions on the webpage.
The website link is in the description box below, folks. Telephone number again, 0800 240 200.
0800 240 200.
And that will actually give you access to whatever you want to do.
That will give you access to, yes, that is our helpline number. You could also email helplines helpline. You can email helpline at cancersupportfrance.org, and that will go through confidentially to our helplines as well.
Okay, well, I think we're we've covered. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sue,
Thank
for
you for
coming
the
and talking.
opportunity, Fiona. That's been really...
And sorry, folks, about the dogs and the birds, but this is a lovely park, and we just couldn't resist the opportunity of having a bit of time in the sun. So thanks again, Sue.
Thank you.
Cancer Support France.
CancerSupportFrance.org.
0800 240 200, and it is helpline at cancersupportfrance.org. Further details, as I've said below. So thanks for joining us, and take my glasses off so I can see. Thanks for joining us, and until the next time, bye for now.